Welcome back to Grief Inspired. My name is Catherine McNulty, and today we're going to be talking about what it means to feel homesick in grief, how it might be showing up for you on your grief journey, and then what you can do about it to help ease that loneliness and the pain that you feel when you're missing the people that you love. Grief Inspired, we talk about all things related to grief and the process of being able to keep on living as you move through the grief process. After all, you've lost someone that you love, but your journey is more about figuring out how you have to keep on living, how you can move forward. And I want to be able to give you the motivation and the tools that you can use to help you through that process. Now, before we start talking about what it means to be homesick in grief, I want to invite you over to my Facebook group, which is also called Grief Inspired. There in my Facebook group, you will find a very supportive community of people that you can talk one-on-one with, that you can meet online, that you can share your experiences with, and who will give you the support and the feedback that you want as you go through the grief journey, because they're going through their own grief as well. And there is one thing that I've learned when we talk about loneliness or feeling homesick in grief, is that the way to ease some of that is to do it in community. So I want to invite you to go over to that community. There are 3 small questions that you need to answer in order to get into that community. It is a private group. I keep it very safe and private. So please answer those questions so that we know you're legit, and get into there and get into the conversation. You will be so glad that you did. Now, as we talk about being homesick in grief, I think it'll help to define what homesick means. And I went to the dictionary just to look up the definition for homesick. And when we talk in homesick in its general sense, it's a longing for one's home during a period of absence from it. So if for some reason you leave the home environment that you're in, maybe you leave the city that you were living in, and you're away for a period of time, you can miss it. For example, many of you know that I moved from California to Virginia Beach. And there are many times when I long for things in California. On the hottest, humidest days here in Virginia Beach, California, I think and I say, wow, I really miss the days where there was no humidity and it was 70 degrees and sunny outside. And sometimes I miss that. And I'm homesick for how many of those days we had in California. So that's an example of basic homesickness. When we talk about homesickness and grief, it's more of an emotional state of mind, right? Where the affected person, in this instance, probably you, experiences intense feelings of longing due to separation. Now, this can be typically, it can start with separation from your loved one who's no longer with you because they've passed on. It can be separation from your home environment. And it can be separation from maybe just the things that the way your life once was, because we always talk here about how much grief changes so many things. So when we think about being homesick for our loved ones, well, I want to encourage you as we talk through this conversation, what are the things that you're really homesick for? Right? Like, of course you're homesick because you long and you miss the person that you love. But I want to encourage you to sort of try to dial in from an emotional perspective. What is it that you really miss about the relationship that you had, about the commonalities that you had, the things that you experienced, the way your life was before the loss? So think about those things, and I want you, as you start to build an awareness of them, I want you to drop the comments below and let me know, what is it specifically that you're longing for? And I want to talk about and give you some options. So for example, when we think about longing for the people that we love, is it being able to hold them? Is it hearing the sound of their voice? Is it maybe their laughter? Is it sitting quietly with them while you watch TV and maybe you read a book and they watch TV? Is it sharing a meal? Is it being able to text them during the day on a regular basis? Is it when something happens and you want to be able to pick up the phone and call them and you can't? What is creating for you that homesickness? I want you to drop that comments below. And when we talk about, maybe missing our home environment, maybe it's just missing them being in the space that you're in. Or maybe it's because you've had to change your environment. Maybe it's because you had to leave the home that you were living in. So many of us have to deal with that as part of our loss. Not only have we lost the people that we miss and the people that we love, but then our environment. We have to change that, maybe due to finances or other situations. And so there's a longing there, not only for the person that we've lost, but a longing for maybe the surroundings that we used to be in. Or maybe it's just the way our life once was. So I want to ask you again, what are the things specifically that you're longing for? Is it because your person was someone who really understood you, that you connected with them in a way that was deeper than any other connection that you have? Is it because, when I think about loss of my own dad, there's so many things that I miss about him and that I long for, right? I miss the funny way that he would make himself laugh at what he said, about the way he would retell his stories, the things from his past, and he would retell them over and over again, knowing that we all knew those stories, but he wanted to share them again. Or the way he over-exaggerated how great people were around him, right? The woman who brought him bread that was the best bread on the planet, and she was the most magnificent person in the world. And he just had this way of really over-exaggerating things that would always leave me smiling. And so for me, with my dad, and I'm coming up on the 1-year anniversary of his loss, I think what I'm longing for most is being able to pick up the phone and call him, or being able to hear some of the things that were so commonplace and so routine, and sometimes even the things that I found a little bit annoying when I would go and visit to them. And so just reflecting on that, right? Those are the things. And so what is it? Well, I think that for me personally, it's the commonality, just the regular nature of, him being there and being able to go and visit and being able to just hear him and know that he's there. And even the weird way he would banter and, argue with my mother. Sometimes even that I can miss, right? Even though it's the thing that, used to make me crazy. But I can long for that too, because it's not there. Being homesick, right, is because something has been taken away. You don't have it anymore. The thing that's different about being homesick and grief versus being homesick when you're just away from a home or from people is, I think that the conversation or the definition of homesick typically means that you can go back, right? That you're homesick for a period of time and then you can go back to it. Being homesick and grief, you can't go back, right? So you have that longing, and the longing will persist for as long as it needs to. And I think that our job in this is, getting in touch with what is it that we really miss, right? And why do we miss it so much? There's so many things that we can miss, but being able to articulate them and pinpoint them, I think is helpful. Naming what's going on and understanding your grief, I think helps in the processing of your grief. And I think it makes your grief a little bit lighter. So I want to encourage you. I mentioned my Facebook group earlier. I want you to leave comments here, but I want to invite you to go over to my Facebook group and share some of what you're experiencing in that group with other people, because I can guarantee that they will understand, just like I do. And I want to know more about your grief and what's going on. And by us staying in community and talking about it, I think it lightens the load a little bit. I think it makes that longing a little less lonely. I think we don't talk about our loved ones enough. It's something that we do in my grief course all of the time, right? Every single week we have the opportunity to get together and share more about our experience with our loved ones. It's not only about talking about our grief, it's talking about how our life was before our loss. It's about talking about how important the relationship was, how close we were, what the things that we liked so much about that relationship. Those are the things that are so important. And I think that there's something that I need to remind myself of many times, is because we can really get lost in our thoughts, and we can be all up in our head about how much pain we're in, how lonely we are, how isolated we feel. I think that we need to remind ourselves of why we feel the way that we do. Remind ourselves that feeling this way is okay. Because I think we also, and I don't know if this is you, let me know if this is you, but sometimes when I get up in my head and my thoughts and I'm feeling sad, sometimes I make myself wrong for it. And I tell myself I shouldn't be feeling this way, and I need to snap out of it. And, and heaven knows you've got people around you who are telling you, like, just to get back to normal and get over it and move on, which we all know is ridiculous. That's why we hang out here together, because we're the ones that get it. Only the people who are in deep grief can really, really understand what you're going through. And so I think that's so important. But an important thing to remember is that everything that you long for, whether it be the moments or just the person, if you're longing for them, it's because it's deeply important to you. And that's never wrong. It's part of who you are. It's part of your experience on this planet. It's part of the love that you share with them. And the longing that you're feeling, it can, like I said, it can be very overwhelming. It can cause depression. And sometimes it can really keep us stuck. It can keep us stuck in our grief. And it can really make us isolate ourselves. So I want you to ask yourself, are you isolating yourself? Are you up in your head with your own thoughts? Are you not sharing with others? And are you just sort of staying stuck within? Because I know that's a tendency that I have, and I think it's a natural thing. And I don't want you to feel like that's wrong. I want you to acknowledge when you're doing it and realize that in this life, being connected to other people is really the most important thing. That's one thing that I have learned on my grief journey. We cannot do this alone. You have to have other people. And when we tend to be hurt, vulnerable, raw, feeling unsteady, out of control, overwhelmed, we isolate to want to feel safe. But I think the real safety that you can find is with being with the right people in a community that's supportive. And I want to try to provide that to you here on YouTube and on Facebook as well. I try to remind myself that I'm lucky that I get to miss them. I'm lucky that I get to be homesick and grief, because I knew them, because I love them. And that love and that experience and everything that we shared was a gift, right? And the relationship that I had with my father was a close one. which makes it hurt more when we lose them, of course. But I also know that not everybody has a close relationship with their parents. Not everybody has a great relationship with a spouse that you can be devastated when you lose. And so for me, it helps to remind myself how lucky I am to be missing my dad right now. And it takes a little bit of the weight of my loneliness, of my homesickness. It takes some of it away. And I want to remind you too, again, this is something that we can often forget. And sometimes I describe the grief journey. We talk with the 5 stages of grief. It's not linear. It's not like you start your grief journey and everything incrementally gets better. And then suddenly, ta-da, you're healed. That doesn't happen, right? Grief is very much full of up and downs. And sometimes I compare it to the stock market. If you know anything about the stock market in general, over time, will always go up. If you put money in and you leave it in the stock market, over time, it will always increase. But as it's increasing through that process, let's say you leave it in for 10 or 20 years, over those 10 or 20 years, the ups and downs of the stock market are off the charts, right? We've all seen it. We've all experienced it. We've all lived it. We've seen what's happened with the stock market over the last several years. But if you step back and you look at it over time, the stock market will always go up. And so I want you to know that your grief over time, as long as you're doing the work, you're getting better. Things are getting better. And this week in my grief course, we're going to talk about paying attention to our progress, because sometimes we forget. We forget to look back. So I want you to think about 6 months ago. I want you to think about, depending on where you are in your grief journey, think about earlier in your process. You are further along than you were before. You know more about your grief. You know more about yourself. You know more about your life. And you've kept on living. And that's what this is about. And I want to give you the motivation to keep on living. And when things are up and down, when things are hard, when your homesickness for the person or the place that you used to live, for the familiarity, for the commonalities that you shared with them, all of the things, know that you are on this journey and that you are moving forward. You're doing it. You are someone who keeps on living. And that's what this grief journey is about, how we keep on living and we keep going. And that doesn't mean that it's always easy, because it's not. There's times when it's really hard. I get that. I'm still on my own grief journey when it comes to my dad, and there's days that are really hard. There's weeks that are harder than others. Life becomes more difficult. Things don't stop. You all know this. And so I want to remind you to keep on living and to keep going. And I want to end with a quote that I found, something that you can think about. And I want you to, before I read the quote, I want you to make sure that you've dropped comments below about what it is that you are homesick for. What is it specifically? Get in touch with it. Spend time thinking about it today. So here's the quote that I want to leave you with. I used to be homesick for places I had lived in or for the people I had loved. Now I have this craving for the future, as if homesick for the unknown. So much about our grief journey is about looking back in the past, focusing on the things that we lost. But when we talk about how to keep on living, that means we need to look to the future as well. There are things that are coming in your future that one day you maybe be homesick for too. But these are the things that are the unknown for you. Now I have this craving for the future, as if homesick for the unknown. I want to encourage you that as much as you long for the past, I also want you to crave your future. I want you to keep on living, and I want to remind you that there are new people that you are going to meet. There are new experiences that you're going to have. You're going to find out more about yourself, and there are more wonderful things that you will continue to cherish. So go and find those things. Keep on living. Take your loved one and their memory with you into that future, to the things for you that are still unknown for you right now, but will become familiar as you move forward. Have a great week, and we'll talk to you soon.